All right, Mentor Minutes is live over here on my Facebook channel. If you're watching this or listening to this on any of the recordings in YouTube or my podcast, you can always submit your questions through email, cm@cameronmorrissey.com, or just comment to whatever it is that you're listening or watching to, and I check for those comments for next episodes and get those questions on for the next episode. For everybody that's tuning in here, and as we queue up some visitors, I wanted to discuss something that I kind of came upon as I was working through. It was a busy week. I did a couple of talks at a conference out in Washington, D.C., and then I had a workshop up in San Francisco that I was conducting. And there was a theme that kind of ran through both of them. And I closed out my sessions in both areas with this thought, and that is when we talk time management, everybody has got a plate that is overflowing with things that you need to get done. And when we talk about time management, it isn't necessarily what you spend your time on. It is how you are spending your time. I wish that I had some sort of cheat or some magic pill that got everything off of your plate. But Bridget, so good to see you here. But what it really comes down to is it comes down to putting in the effort and the work up front to get the benefit down the road. It's an investment, and that's what I talked about in my talk on time management in DC, was that time is an investment. What you spend your time on now reaps a return down the road. How you spend your time, how you invest your time can have a return down the road, or it doesn't. And so what I see so often is, and I'm a big fan of the 80-20 principle, putting in that 20% of the effort that gets 80% of the benefit. But sometimes you need to put that little extra in so that you can get the benefit down the road. We shortchange our discussions with our employees so we don't build up the engagement and the trust that we need to, which causes us to spend more time trying to get buy-in down the road. That's just one example. We don't delegate tasks so that we can get it done in the instant case in the short term, but we're not investing in our employees, and we have to continue doing that task down the road. So one of my big takeaways from this week is that you want to expend that effort where it's appropriate and where you can get that return, that little bit of extra time, extra talking to an employee, that sort of thing can be something that gets you that benefit down the road. So take a look at what you're doing, take a look at some of the processes, some of the tasks you have in place, and look for those opportunities to make that investment in your team, in yourself, and in your task that's going to get you those benefits down the road. Eliana, so good to see you here from the other side of the world. And Christina, always good to see you here as well. I did also get a question in regards to referrals, and I don't make referrals as far as management is concerned. I do work with a lot of people on one-on-one basis, and most of them are all employed, but I just don't get into the referral thing. It's just not something that I do. But I did get that question offline, and I wanted to address it right away. David, so good to see you here from Scotland on the other side of the pond. It's a brisk 43 degrees centigrade over here in Las Vegas today, and much cooler, I'm sure, over in Scotland. So as we've queued up some people, if you got any questions, leadership, management, any struggles you've been going through, drop them down into the comment section. I'll just take them in order. But with that said, I do have some that I received offline. And first one kind of goes along with what the discussion was in regards to time management, and that is, I sometimes struggle with completing my own priorities because of compounded tasks that keep coming in from others. Prioritizing and yet still being responsive to others' needs too as a manager. How do you balance that? And that's that reality of prioritization. And the example that I draw on for everybody out there, and I'm sure everybody can kind of go along with this one, and that is, you're driving into work or you're taking the train into work, and you've got those three things, couple of things that you know you want to get done over the course of the day. You stroll into the office, you get yourself a cup of coffee, you say hi to a few people, you sit down at your desk, you open up your email, and then lo and behold, 9 hours later, you're driving home, you're taking the train home, and you're going, I didn't accomplish any of those things that I set out to do today. What happened in particular when you opened email is you made all of those priorities that you set for yourself subservient to everybody else's priorities. The first thing that I recommend with prioritization, and it's a reality as far as management and leadership goes, you're going to get interrupted. Your boss is going to come in with whole new priorities over the course of the day. But take the first, just 15 minutes of your day. Hey, ideally it'd be longer, but 15 minutes is enough. Close the door. Don't open your email and get working on those things that are a priority to you. Those things that you were thinking about on the way in, the things that are highest on your to-do list. 15 minutes gets them started. Starting is the hardest part of so many of these tasks. Get them started. It creates a little bit of momentum. And when you carve out 5 minutes, 10 minutes over the course of the day, you can keep those things going. That first 15 minutes can transform the way that you are able to handle your priorities and how often you're able to actually get them across the finish line, and so you don't end the day not having accomplished anything. That's the big key, is those first 15 minutes working on your priorities before anybody can get to you. The other thing that I recommend in regards to this is you may not know what crisis or what priority is going to get juggled over the course of the day. You get back into the office on Monday. Something is going to happen, but you don't know what it is. But you know that it's likely to take place. So carve out, I put in buffer meetings in your calendar. 10:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just half an hour. Those help you from getting overloaded in your calendar and in your priorities. So when you do get a crisis at 9:30 in the morning, you can get back on track when you get to that buffer meeting. If you get another crisis while you're away at lunch, you can handle that at 3 o'clock, or you can get back on track. You can handle it in the instant case and get back on track. But those buffers are a way for you to get your priorities and get your day back on track. Because too often what happens is something happens at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning. It derails your plan for the day and you can't get back on track. Put those buffer meetings in there and you can actually get back on track with your day. And that's something that's going to be hugely helpful for you in getting your priorities taken care of. The reality is that you cannot get everything off of your to-do list, but you can get the important things if you put a focus on them and use a couple of these techniques to be able to get those things across the finish line. Next question I have is, I'm a frontline supervisor, would like any advice or thoughts on trying to get Generation X to get along and work with millennials. Got some personality conflicts. So, a couple of things in regards from a generational standpoint is those with the most experience, whether Generation X, baby boomers, whatever it is, those with 20 years of experience want that experience to be recognized. Those that are coming right out of college want their new ideas to be recognized. Those are the two things that you're looking at right there. So what you want to do is you want to manage the environment so that the ideas are able to come to fruition, but in a way that is acknowledging and looking for the experience. Because where those new ideas and the experience come together is where the magic happens. That's where innovation takes place. Innovation doesn't just take place with new ideas. You need the experience to bring those things to fruition. So look for opportunities to bring those people together in that framework. Now, the young generation does not have a monopoly on new ideas. The older generation has plenty of new ideas that they haven't been able to put into place. Oftentimes, you can actually flip-flop those roles, where there's been an idea out there for 10 years, but nobody's come up with the new way of thinking on how to actually implement it. So do a little bit of cross-pollination in those things, but realize that what people want from a generation, or a millennial or a Generation Z, that's the next one that comes on after millennials, there's another one coming. What they're looking for is access and respect for their ideas. What those that have been with the company for forever, they just want an acknowledgement of that experience. You run into this when young people are managing old people, for lack of a better term. And what you want to do is simply acknowledge the experience. Hey, I was thinking about doing this. Has that been done in this organization before? You reference that experience. It opens up a dialogue, and those dialogues are what create the understanding so that people aren't the enemy. You create more understanding, you create more dialogue, more of the good things are going to pop to the top of the list. Christina has our first question online, and that is, how do you coach an employee that is loud and bubbly? I enjoy his enthusiasm, but other teams' employees don't appreciate it so much. I think you might be answering this question now. No, not necessarily. I didn't reference the question before. Quite simply, have the conversation, Christina. I love the enthusiasm too. I want the enthusiasm, but sometimes you just need to take it down one notch or look around for the right timing on it. Truthfully, this is probably one of those 80-20 principles where you're looking for 10%, 20% decrease in the amount of bubbliness that'll get the 80% of the benefit and make it more tolerable for everybody else. I would simply have the transparent conversation with him and say, hey, I love the enthusiasm. It's great, all right? But at a certain point, it becomes a distraction for others. So I'd love for you to just tone it down a notch. I don't want it to go away. I love it. But it does become a distraction sometimes for others. So we want to just manage it. And I'll look to you for some of those times. So one thing that would be good with this conversation is to have 2 times, not one example, because they'll blow that off as just a one-off incident, but have 2 examples, maybe even 3, where you would have liked to have seen it toned down or where it was too much of a distraction for others. So remember on Thursday when we were talking about this and you were really excited about it? Well, Cameron was dealing with an irate customer at the same time and it was distracting for him. So just be mindful of instances like that where we're taking it over the edge. When all else failed, difficult conversations. When you are dealing with a difficult and uncomfortable conversation with an employee, the best way to tackle it is to be transparent and just be completely honest. What happens is if you try to get too cute with it and you massage the message, you lose the message. You come across as disingenuous, it gets muddled. It's best to just be upfront and honest. Great question for us, Christina. Crystal, what book, Crystal's question is, what book would you recommend for a team to read together? So I'll tell you what the first book I ever was assigned to read by a manager, and they had us read it as it was a small team of about 7 people. They had us all read it together and we discussed it, was Who Moved My Cheese? And it was something that throughout the course of my career, as I stepped into a new role, I made the leadership team reread that. So that's one that I really like. Is because it talks about change management and managing change, and that's everything. We talk about change management in regards to huge, big things that are going on, and yes, those are changes, system rollouts, reorganizations, that sort of thing. But every single improvement that you make, every single problem that you fix represents a change. And I think that book is very easy to get through. Everybody loves it. And we've read that one in Fish. Well, shoot, then I've got to come up with another one. Let's see here. What else might I read as a team? Peaks and Valleys is one that I personally recommend. I'll go into the personal list a little bit more. I shy away from, so my favorite recommendations for books for everybody that's out there is going back to the classics. And that is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those 2 touch and have influenced so many books that are down the road, move down the road again. But they are thicker books, and it's difficult to get a team to go through. Eliana, the name of the book was Who Moved My Cheese? It's a silly book. It's very readable, very quickly to get through. And yes, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is another classic one out there. Thank you, John, for that one. But getting in touch with those 2 books is great. And I just threw this out to an audience before, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and everybody laughed. And I go, why did everybody laugh? And they go, well, we've read it already. Yeah, well, read it again. You can reread some of those books and you will pick those things up. I know I've got a couple of great recommendations that are coming through there now, so don't just listen to me. Dorothy has the next question for us, and okay, as the German soccer team seems to mess it up really, would like to get your advice on some hints to keep the faith in a destructive, non-caring, I love the tie together, Dorothy, destructive, non-caring, not responsive work environment. Not necessarily reacting to your bosses and mates, but some advice to pamper oneself to get more strengths to handle these difficult work situations. The sad fact is so many of us do not get the sort of positive reinforcement and the motivation from our leaders that we should. One of the most common questions we get on there is in some reference to motivating staff, and I wish more leaders would be asking that. Your your motivation, I put the onus on yourself, and I put the responsibility back on yourself, Dorothy. So find ways to come up with the successes that you had. Track your own progress. People talk about, how do I brag about myself in the office so that I can get, promoted? That's one aspect of it, but just some self-care and some, realization that, you are doing good things. It's not just the bad things that are going on in the organization. Track your own progress in regards to certain metrics. At the end of the day, what success did I have? What went well today? Do that at the end of the week. What successes? What went well this particular week? There are a ton of successes and a ton of great things going on in your organization and that you are contributing to. The issue is so many times, and it's a human characteristic, we're focused on the threats and we're focused on the problems and fixing those, and we forget about all of the successes. Every organization and every employee out there is successful in 95+% of what they do on a day in, day out basis, but we take it for granted. So just taking 5 minutes at the end of the day, what was a success today? Taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end of the week, what was a success? Write them out. Track those things. And that's something where, I don't want to say you pamper yourself necessarily, but that's those things that will help get your mind in the right frame of mind. And that can be hugely helpful. The other thing that I recommend for people is taking breaks. Finding 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, 5 or 10 minutes in the afternoon, and getting away from your desk for lunch, even if it's just for 20 or 30 minutes. Those breaks in your day help you to reset your mind, get you recharged and ready to go for whatever the challenges are. They are those things where that's time invested. When we talked at the outset of this about investing time, those 10 minutes, those 20 minutes are the sort of things that pay off in 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of extra productivity because you're able to bring more to it. There's been a number of studies that have been done where those individuals, when they pair a group of people together, it's those individuals that take breaks that actually finish before the people that just work straight through. So look for those breaks, but also look to your successes, Dorothy. I really recommend that as a good exercise for you and for other people. I was given the book, Not My Circus, Not My Monkeys. Crystal, I have not read that. I'm going to have to put that down as one to check out. I love the title. How do you ensure coworkers, thank you, Lana. It's good to see you here again for the question. How do you ensure coworkers respect their supervisor and the decisions, even when they're tough decisions that is not agreed with, i.e. not having to repeat yourself? Well, the key to getting teams to respect the decisions that you make or the decisions that your supervisor makes is giving the reason why. Being transparent on why the decision was made, what it is addressing, and why it is important. And it can simply be, it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. I need you all to answer the phone such and such because blank and the reason. If you get in the habit of giving the reason behind your decisions, what happens is that over time, people start understanding that there is a reason behind what you're doing, and there builds a little bit of trust, and that quickens up the time that they buy in. And it increases the amounts of times they just buy in automatically because they can just assume that there is some reason, and most of the time there's some logic behind it. The other thing to do is to actually bring it around and create a dialogue behind it. Hey, this is a tough decision. I know it's not fun. What do you think could be done to make it better? What would you recommend? Open up that dialogue with other team members. Partially, that's being done as a deterrent. All right. Part of it is that people are just being defensive and off-putting and they don't want to do a particular thing. So if you put them on point for something else, they're going to be less likely to do that in the future because they don't want to be put in that position. The other thing is it does open up any deep-seated concerns that they have, a competing commitment that they have in their mind. And that's something that you can then address head on and then get past that so that they can buy in. So you find out where that resistance is. You do that through questions. So give the reason why, behind all, as many of your decisions as you can so that they understand that there is a consistent reasoning behind what it is that you're doing. And you can give this advice to your supervisors as well. But then also open it up for questioning so that you can tackle the resistance, and that gives you the ability to repeat yourself. One of the things in communication, Lana, that I will mention in regards to this is that you do have to repeat yourself. Part of it is that there is a lot of messaging that is going out to employees, and what you are consistently talking about is what they will deem to be important. Also, the ways that you communicate should be mixed up. You should repeat yourself in different ways. The example I always use is ages ago in my call center days. We would have a morning meeting to update everybody on what's going on before they got on the phones, things they needed to be reminded of. So we'd have a stand-up meeting. And we'd post that as a piece of paper up on the bulletin board. And it would be on our SharePoint site. And we had flat screen TVs that would show those updates throughout the day. But you would be shocked at how many people I would walk up to 4 and 5 hours into their shift and mention something and go, huh? What are you talking about? It's in 4 or 5 different areas. You have seen it multiple times. You do have to repeat yourself because lots of times, and I'll give you the clear example of why, I'll give somebody a get out of jail free card for why you need to repeat yourself. The legitimate reason would be what you said before that is causing them a question in their mind that they are working through, and so they are not listening effectively to whatever you say following that. It isn't that they are ignoring you, it's that they are processing what you said beforehand. That can be a reason why they miss it. But repeating things is sadly something that you do need to do to get your message across in a communicative way for everybody. There you go, Crystal. Glad you liked it. Eliana, there you go. Estelle has the next one for us, and that is, people will always complain no matter what. Yep. Business world is not for the weak of heart. Who moved my cheese was something all my students read, but we have a new area that we need to approach in business, artificial intelligence. Yeah, and I'll break down AI here just a little bit. But I did want to highlight what you spoke about first there, and that is people always complain no matter what. And that is something that you do need to get used to in management. People will get used to a situation. No matter how good things are right now, they can expect things to go on a higher trajectory. And so bringing people into that reality of the situation is something that is a challenge, to say the least. I hired people out of a recession and then had them pissed off because a year later they didn't get a cost of living increase in their wages, even though the company was losing money. People that, they were out of work that we hired that were legitimately pissed off. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, do you not remember this? Do you not see the situation? But they will find a way to complain. Part of it is just human nature. We do the same thing in leadership. We have those frustrations that are perhaps misplaced. But you manage those things with transparency as much as possible. Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence, there's a big buzzword around artificial intelligence and its impact. But if you've automated anything in your workplace, if you've run an automated report, then you've run artificial intelligence. A lot of that is big data. A lot of it is just computation. A lot of it is math work that goes into it. And so I have far less of a fear of artificial intelligence because there's almost always a logic that's built into it. And so it is the classic example that we'll use as we run a live session on Facebook. If you stop and read a particular article or post that's on Facebook, they record that. And that tells them things. And so then that allows them to tweak the algorithm just a little bit. I want to say it's obvious. It's like if you had a person walking around somebody at a mall with a clipboard, putting check marks next to everything that they stopped and looked at. You would have a very clear picture of what that person's likes and dislikes are. It's not some freaky intelligence thing. It's actually very computational and logical. So I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. Yes, it could go completely Terminator haywire. But I want to take away, some people have a natural fear of that when that starts coming up in interviews or in discussions or in projects. And really when you break it down, it's actually very simple. It just has a kind of dramatic effect and it gets a little bit intricate, but the logic behind it is often very, very simple. and focus on positive things. I agree. Mostly we look at and discuss threads and don't mention the positive things. I hope that helps, Dorothy. And if you have any follow-up, anybody has any follow-ups on this, drop them down in the comment section. I have no problem reiterating something, going back to something, or rethinking something. Sometimes somebody will throw something out and it'll change the way that I view things. These things are almost as much for me as they are for you out there. It still says, according to me, all these issues are due to a lack of communication. We need to be super alert. AI will take over all of our jobs, and what will and can we do about that? Oh, good. Okay, so that's good. So, two things on there. Communication is your default. It's if you don't feel like you're over communicating, you're not communicating enough. And what I tell everybody is, if you have a problem, if you have an opportunity, if you have an uncomfortable situation, your default reaction can always be to communicate, because it's almost always a part of the solution for it. Now, in regards to, say, artificial intelligence taking over everybody's jobs, or somebody coming into your industry and taking over your work. Let's use the example of Amazon killing businesses. Back in the 80s, it was Walmart that was coming into towns here in the United States and killing out all of the businesses. Then Amazon comes in and does the same thing. What happens is that you adjust. People adjust. They have been talking about technological changes that are going to put everybody out of work for the last century. Lo and behold, we have jobs for everybody. What I find and what I believe is going to take place when you start talking about AI is that it is going to continue to do more and more mundane tasks, and then a little bit more interesting tasks, and then a little bit more on top of that. But what you're always going to have is that you're going to have people that are standing on top of all of that information, making other decisions that are out there. Stay flexible with the workforce, keep communicating, keep working on getting new skills. And what you're going to find is that's not going to be a problem for you down the road. Now, there are industries. Trucking. My father has been in trucking his entire life. That's one where you could see self-driving cars being an issue. I don't know how that's going to play out. That's a million jobs or something like that here in the United States. But people will adjust. There will need to be dispatchers that take place. There will need to be more foremen as robots are running around. I use the example of, I'll use a perfect example, the McDonald's down the street from me. So it put in a year ago, it was probably one of the first ones that put in those touch screens where you don't need to go to the counter to get your order or to put in your order. You do it actually on a touch screen. And so the concern is well, that's replacing jobs. Well, and this may not be the case in every McDonald's that's out there, but all they basically did, they might have cut one worker, is all I can think of. They still need everybody in the back to cook things, but now what happens is somebody brings my order out to me. Somebody runs around in the middle of my meal and asks if I need anything else or if I need a refill on one of my drinks. It's almost like they turned McDonald's into a sit-down restaurant that's fast food. So I don't think anybody lost their job because they upped the service is what they did with that. Now, I'm not saying that's going to take place everywhere, but here's the kicker. What is on the register when I go up to pay in cash instead of a card? A now hiring sign. So it may have eliminated one particular job, but they're still looking for people. Charleston Avenue, up in Summerlin in Las Vegas. If you're looking for a job, they've got a McDonald's job for you there, even though they have automated so many of those things. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of adjustments made there. Could be wrong on it, but like I say, and it's probably been 150 years since the Industrial Revolution they've been talking about these things that are going to put people out of work. In individual cases, yes, but the majority of people are going to be able to find jobs and adjust if you keep in the market and you keep working on new things and working on your skill sets. You should be always growing. Thanks, Lana. I'm glad that helped you out. Ashley, so good to see you here as well. Looks like the German is embraced. Oh, yes. Yeah, I did notice, Dorothy, that the Germany was playing right now, and it's 1-1 against Sweden. FYI, my ethnicity, I'm a quarter Swedish. That's the largest part you got of me. Otherwise, I'm a Western European mutt. Brandy had the next question. That's, how do you have people work at the same level if you aren't there to oversee and they are still not after building culture and expectation? Let me read that one more time, Brandy, sorry. How do you have people work at the same level if you aren't there? Oh, okay. So the question is how do you have people not work at the same level within the hierarchy, but work at the same level of expectation? You have to find some way to check it. Okay, there has to be, I'd like to say there's some sort of report. Okay, what you're looking for is you're looking for whatever the results are, and you're balancing their expectation that you had when you were in the office with your expectation afterwards when they get the results. What we have a lot, and I use this example, is if you ever work from home, whatever, everybody who's worked from home realizes that, wait, there's a ton of time that is wasted in the day because all of a sudden I'm able to work from home, do all of my work, just like if I was in the office, yet still, do the laundry, wash the dishes, get the vacuuming done, pick up the kids from school, hit the doctor's appointment, whatever it is. There is an enormous amount of time. But what you do in those cases when you have those work from home people is you're looking at the results. What are the results? Give them the freedom in how they want to work on it, Brandy. But focus on that higher level, and that's what you're going to hold them to. And that's what you're going to talk them through. Now, if the culture isn't in place, if the expectations are not being met even from the start, okay, this becomes the excuse to have those follow-up conversations with them. So you'll have follow-on discussions. Okay, well, you didn't meet this deadline. What went into you not meeting it? We're just talking it through. What went in? Well, this happened and this happened. And what you're going to do is you're going to find ways to address some of the things that prevent them from meeting those expectations. It's an excuse to have a further conversation with them, get a little bit deeper, ask them questions about what went on, and find 1 or 2 things to work on, and then reference those things another week later or 2 weeks later. What are we doing with the expectation? How can we get there? What ideas do you have? What's working? What's not working? What are the obstacles? How can I help you in these particular situations? And what that does is that raises those expectations because now you are a party to that. It's a team still working on it, even if you are distant from them. And you're also affecting the culture in those cases as well. What you keep talking about, getting back to repetition, what you keep talking about is what they are going to deem important. And people don't like to have conversations every single week about how they failed. So a lot of this is a motivational effort, a negative motivation, which we don't necessarily like, but which is a reality that'll help them get through. But you're working logically through some of those things and some of those barriers that they might have, so you are eliminating their excuses. I can't remember who said it, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but that is, half of leadership is eliminating people's excuses for failure. Can't remember who said it. Somebody can chime in if you've got it there. But I love that one, and it's true, because if they have an excuse, they will use it, and you won't get the sort of results that you're looking for. Shirley just wanted to add to what I had to say about complaints. Yeah, complaints may be an opportunity to improve things, absolutely. We may view complaints as just complaining for no good reason, but from personal experience, and sorry, the thing scrolled on me here. From personal experience, there's often validity behind the complaint. So if we listen carefully to what is being complained about without just dismissing it as invalid because of the attitude behind it, we may find, for example, that a process could be improved that may be leading to the complaint. What I'll also, and you're absolutely accurate on that, Shirley, is complaints are often kind of the last-ditch emotional effort to be heard by somebody when there is a legitimate concern. What I also say is that complaints are often a trigger that there's something else going on behind the scenes. It may not be the complaint in regards to the instant case. It may be something that is a trigger for dissatisfaction in the workplace, or an interpersonal relationship that is frayed, or expectations or a workload that is too heavy right now. So complaints are a great place to look for next actions on improving the organization. Thanks, Shirley. I really appreciate that follow-up. That was great. Holly has our next one, and it is, how do you handle upper management not treating management with dignity and respect and not held to the same expectations? Executive management routinely doesn't hold themselves to the same expectations. Flat out, just being honest with you out there. If you do have an executive management that holds themselves to the same expectations, enjoy it, because it's something that is difficult for people as they rise up the ladder to stay in touch with. What I do find is that in that case, it is a test of your integrity, and it is a test that everybody else in the organization is going to see. That is the thing. People see more than you give them credit for, as far as your effort, your work. We talk about bosses who steal the credit for people's work. Baloney. That may happen sometimes, but most of the time the rest of the organization knows what's going on because that person has stolen credit from everybody in the organization. So everybody is aware of those things. So I put it forth as a challenge for your integrity, for you to hold yourself to those higher standards. What I also would encourage you to do is not let somebody else's disrespect have an effect on your disrespect. I want you to be the person, Holly, who exercises change amongst the other managers. I want you to show dignity and respect to others. I want you to prop people up when somebody is mistakenly or incorrectly disrespected by executive management. I want you to come in afterwards and say, hey, just so you know, I heard that conversation and I don't feel that way about how you did this particular project. So you can be the person that kind of steps in and is the leader in those cases. A lot of leadership is not necessarily going against the grain, but leaning into challenges. And so this is an opportunity for you, and not a fun one. I'm not, saying this is fun. I'm not saying they shouldn't be giving you dignity and respect, but it is an opportunity that you can kind of lean into and build up some of your leadership traits. Hope that helps. I also believe we listen to reply and not listen to listen. Yes, Estelle, that's so much of the case is doing that. One of the cheats that I want to mention in regards to listening is so important in those cases. But one of the cheats for listening is to ask more questions. When you ask somebody a question, you are opening yourself up to actually listen to what the response is. So that's one of those cheats to listening. Yeah, John, I briefly covered it right at the beginning there. I don't do referrals for managers. There are several that I work with on a one-on-one basis. Most of them are employed. One in particular comes to mind that isn't. But I just don't get into the referral game because too much of it is putting myself out there and putting some uncomfortable situations that can take place. So no, unfortunately I don't, John, and I'm sorry about that. Holly, I'm glad that worked for you. I will, if you have some questions, I'll give you another 15 seconds or so to jump on here and send over your questions. If you're tuning into this on a replay, I love the fact you've gotten all the way to the end of it. And if you have any struggles, any situations, frustrations, definitely shoot me an email, cm@CameronMorsey.com. Comment on it, whether it's YouTube, whether it's the podcast. I get those comments and I will get them on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. John, I appreciate you reaching out to me though. I really do. I like that sort of engagement. So anything that you guys have, you can always drop them in here. I'll get them on tomorrow's episode. Otherwise, take care. Have a great Saturday or a great Sunday if you're on the other side of the date line for everybody over there in Australia and New Zealand. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.